The Aces have won their third WNBA title in the past 4 years because of Asia Wilson.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Clea Butler here, your host for Locked On Women's Basketball. Joined alongside me is my co-host, Sophia Jones. Such an exciting final series that we had with the Aces against the Mercury. A lot to talk about today. We're going to discuss just how this win was different for Vegas compared to their back-to-back championships that they had in the previous years. We're going to talk about the downfall of the Mercury a little bit and what happened specifically in this fourth game. But we would have to start with Asia Wilson. But before we get into that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Asia Wilson had such a dominant performance in the finals within this entire series. She is a four-time league MVP. We already know. She led the game. She led the game in game 4 too. And I knew this coming off that game 3 momentum. Once she had that game winner, I knew that the next game was the last game. That was going to finish the series off. Last night, she had 31 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 blocks. And then she won another finals MVP honor, her second MVP honor. And she averaged 28.5 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocks in this finals in general. I can't say it enough. She is insane. Like, she is next level, and nobody is even close to her right now.
No one's close. I don't think anyone playing is close currently. And this championship and what she was able to accomplish this whole season, I think is really making people have some uncomfortable conversations about who the WNBA GOAT is. It's kind of, she's so young, she's still in her 20s. So that's one of those things where sometimes player or people are reluctant to give them their props. But I think you really have to consider Asia. I mean, 3 champions, 2 championships, 2 finals MVP, 4 MVPs, 3 times defensive player of the year. First player this season in WNBA and NBA to win MVP, defensive player of the year, and finals MVP and a scoring title in a season. She's just consistently breaking records and reinventing the system. It's been so special to watch, but I think, like I said, this championship and what she was able to do and just put the team on her back this I guess I'll say post All-Star break season has been so special, and I think really kind of catapults her into those conversations with the GOAT.
I think Becky Hammon is a coach that obviously has been in these type of positions before, played in the WNBA. Obviously, just the coaching career that she has had, nobody is messing around with Becky Hammon. We know that she is the truth and she knows how to coach a basketball game. What I love most is that she will give these players credit and also include the players from the past. So I believe it was in their post-game press conference where she said, nobody compares to the players that are playing in the league today. And that's how you know that a league is successful, when things change, when you see the caliber of players that they're like. And she said Asia Wilson was the epitome of that. When players are getting, stronger, bigger, faster, and the product on the court is different than we saw years ago. Not that there's any discredit to them. Those are women that, when you think of like a Sylvia Fowles, laid the groundwork of what the WNBA can be and was a fantastic player. But when you think of the versatility of these players now, and especially Asia Wilson at the position that she's in, the way nobody would ever think of women being able to move like this ever. Like, truthfully, at her size, I think it was more, back to the basket, sort of traditional center back in the day, right? And Becky Hammon, like, she'll be the first one to say that. But the growth of the league is shown through what the players are capable of doing. And Asia Wilson is who does that. And even Becky Hammon after the game said, you have a Mount Rushmore, and Asia Wilson, she's alone on Mount Everest. There's no one around her. And this is coming from Becky Hammon, who has seen a lot of amazing basketball players. That is such a compliment in itself, but also truly shows just how impactful of a player Asia Wilson is, not only to the WNBA, but to the game of basketball as a whole.
Exactly. And I think you could even go a step further and just talk about the whole cultural aspect and impact that Asia Wilson has. I mean, that commercial that she's doing with her shoes and the Miss Mary Mack hand game, that's just is such an epitome of just these little black girls being able to see themselves in a player like Asia Wilson in the way that she holds herself, not only on the court, but off, and just with the grace and intelligence. I mean, she has a book out as well, and just she's just doing it all over on and off the floor. But I think when we talk about basketball, it is so hard to dispute her accomplishments and the player that she is. You talk about traditionally, most coaches would see her size and want to put her just on the block, back to the basket, which you can be extremely dominant that way. But that wasn't enough for Asia. We're seeing that evolution of her game. And I think that's what the scariest part is. Her game continues to evolve. We saw her step out and get more comfortable at the 3-point line and the perimeter this past season. What is the league going to do when she starts hitting them consistently and just pulling? That's really going to be spooky, but she just continues to reinvent herself and her game. And I think that's why when Becky Hammon mentions her being on Mount Everest, I think it's totally reasonable to say that.
What I love most about Asia is no matter, we put her on this pedestal because she deserves to be on it, but she still has this relatability to her. I think anytime that I have ever asked Asia a question, I'm not dumb. I know I'm a reporter. I know not all players really feel like speaking to reporters. Like, I understand it. And she gets interviewed and questioned all the time. But she keeps the same poise and energy for every single question. And she will give you an in-depth answer, no matter what she's feeling. If she doesn't feel like talking to you, if she does feel like talk to you, and she's always going to have a fantastic personality. And I think that consistency, not only on the court, but, her day to day and just her as a person. But even just the fact that, she is an AKA, and you think about, those young Black women and young Black girls that are looking up to her. There's connections, even if they don't play the sport. And I think that's what's so beautiful about it too, where it's just like, yeah, there's maybe girls that look up to her that play basketball, but there's also young girls that look up to her that maybe have never touched a basketball in their life, but she's just such a fantastic role model all around, and just the way she treats people and the connections that she has. And Becky Hammon said it too. She is the first person to remember everyone's birthdays on the team, make sure that everyone feels special, that they have a crown, a balloon, their lockers are decorated. That just shows the character that she has. And yes, she's such a fantastic basketball player, but she's an even better person too. And I just love seeing women like Asia Wilson be role models in a growing league like this. Like, this is what makes me happy.
100%. I mean, I think when you talk about, there's always that discussion, the face of the league. And of course, Sydney Colson, she has her argument, of course. But in in truth, Asia, again, she's standing on that Mount Everest, which is the way that she holds herself on the court and off, and just the way that she shows so much vulnerability within herself. I mean, there was that clip post game of her embracing her boyfriend, Bam Adebayo, and she's in tears saying, "Thank you for believing in me." And that, I don't know why, that really got to me. I started tearing up, but I'm just a lover girl, so that's why it got me. But
When I tell you, I have reposted every single clip of them. I don't know why I feel like I'm a part of the relationship at this point. Every clip, I'm like, repost so cute, repost adorable, repost I love this. But it is like beautiful to see that.
Exactly. And just candid moments like that, I think, is what really draws people to Asia. And you see so much of that personality on the court, and you can see why she's the leader that she is and why she was able to get another MVP, another Defensive Player of the Year, and another championship under her belt this season.
Listen, we can sit here and talk about A'ja Wilson for hours. So much to discuss when you just think of the laundry list of success that she has had and just her as a person. But right after this, we're going to talk a little bit more about why this championship was different for this Aces team compared to previous years. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks when it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. I love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in under a minute. But my favorite part is just adding stacks. So if you want to ride with a player, I can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. And the new injury reboot feature, if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code locked on WNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Okay, so we both feel that this championship is different for the Aces compared to when they went back to back in 2022 and 2023. A big reason is because they faced way more adversity in this season than they did in those back-to-back seasons. In those back-to-back seasons, everybody knew that they were on top within the league. They had winning records. But this season, they were a 500 team as of August 2nd. And that was following their 53-point loss that, everyone talks about, where A'ja sent a group text and said, if you aren't embarrassed, don't show up and you might just be cut. And after that, subsequent 16-game winning streak to end the regular season, they get the number 2 spot when you go into playoffs. And then they end up winning the whole thing. And there was even Chelsea Gray had mentioned post-game for this finals to be right here, right now, compared to where they were. There was a lot of doubt in that locker room. And they had confidence in each other. And they're just really proud of how they stayed the course and trusted the process the entire time. So, when you think of the Aces, you don't truly think of an underdog story. But this season, it truly was kind of that underdog story. And I feel like that's why people were riding for them even more, too.
I agree 100%. And that moment where they had the 53-point loss at the beginning of August to the Minnesota Lynx was such an incredible turning point that I haven't seen too often in sports. And I specifically remember because as the color analyst on radio for the Golden State Valkyries, we were the following 2 games after they got blown out. And I remember watching the game and thinking, and it was a back-to-back too. So they played on a Saturday. The Valkyries faced them on a Sunday. I remember watching that game on Saturday thinking, oh, they're going to want to kick our butts. And I think in that moment, in those games, they blew us out. I will say that. They blew us out. And then even when we got back home to Chase Center, they beat us comfortably again. And in those moments, it felt like a changed Aces team. There was a lot more intentionality. They were playing a lot more together, and everyone's strengths were just really put on a pedestal. We talk about all these great players. I mean, A'ja, Jackie, Jewel, Chelsea, all of them. They're so great individually, but it was kind of that moment that sparked them all really just playing together. And it was really incredible to watch that kind of turnaround and just the shift as well.
3 championships in 4 years, again, largely due to A'ja Wilson, Becky Hammon being an absolute fantastic coach. Obviously, you have the big 3 on the Aces. But another interesting part is that this is their third title on the road after winning at Connecticut in 2022 and at New York in 2023. They win in Phoenix in 2025. And I almost wanted Phoenix to win this game so that they could go back to Vegas so they can celebrate at home, just because they haven't been able to celebrate their championships at home just yet. But I feel like there has to be a sweet feeling to it too, going into somebody else's house and beating them all 4 games in, this extended 7-series game. And again, we'll get into giving the Mercury credit and kind of just like what fell apart for them too. But that speaks volumes to know that they have this extended first time within the WNBA finals. You have a 7-game series. You said, no, we're cool. All we need is 4 games. That's next level for the Aces.
No, exactly. My dad my dad texted. He was like, "Bam's at the game." Asia probably told him to show up because they're gonna clinch it. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's what went down. And I think the way that the Aces just came out, they look so confident. But like you said, we're gonna get more into the game a little bit in the next segment. But just I actually didn't realize that they clinched so many times on the road. And how I'm trying to think how far Phoenix and Las Vegas is. I don't think it's too bad, but I still felt like I heard a decent number of Aces cheers after
Mm.
they won when they raised the trophy. But that's just, again, they're just getting the job done. That's a group full of players that just want to win. They got the veterans on there. They have the Olympians on there as well, and this was really, I think, a special squad, going back to kind of what we talked about a couple minutes ago, where they were not playing around at all. This was gonna be the game that the Phoenix Mercury were gonna win. I think it was either the Aces were gonna sweep, or it was gonna be a gentleman's sweep or a gentlewoman's sweep. But they did not allow Phoenix to have any of, especially with their depleted roster, the power of friendship didn't help them in this case.
It didn't. And your dad is so real for that, to text you, be like, Bam's at the game. Because I know Asia was like, book that flight, Buki. Don't care that you're about to start your season because we're winning tonight. But again, Bam, we were talking about this before. Bam was at every game. I just have to give out a shout out to Bam. He was basically at every single game this season. I saw him in Chicago. He was obviously always at the Aces games. He was like traveling like Sabrina Ionescu's husband. And I love that for him. What would be what is he? Husband? So he would be a hag. The husbands
Oh
and
yeah.
hab, husbands and boyfriends
Yeah,
of
Hab.
WNBA players instead of a wag. He's a hab. And I love that for him. And now it's gonna be great seeing the switch off. Asia can go to the Heat games. It's not bad to have to go to Miami. Asia's living a good life. Let's just say that. But I also want to bring up Jewel Lloyd, because she had said something interesting post game too about, obviously she has seen championships with the Seattle Storm, but she said that this one also just felt different to her, aside from just how they got the win. But we all know that she had some difficulties in Seattle, which subsequently had her leave and come to the Aces. And she said that she kind of felt that she was almost like exiled from Seattle, and that Vegas was the promised land. And I really feel like that spoke volumes, because she has been a little bit outspoken about what truly happened in Seattle. But it's even more gratifying to see that, some of these players that had been added to the roster are having such a great experience, and, getting to sulk and just soak up this finals championship, and just the push that they had. So it's just all around a really well-rounded effort. And you can't help but be happy, no matter who you were rooting for this season. I feel like you can't help but be happy for the Aces.
I agree. And I would say that this one also probably feels sweeter because this is probably the most competitive group of teams that's made it to the playoffs in a minute. When you
Mhm.
look at the top seed, the Minnesota Lynx, who were favorites for like majority of the season, I think up until they lost, basically until they got eliminated, they were still the favorites, I want to say. even team like the Phoenix Mercury that has the star power that they do, the New York Liberty as well, the Atlanta Dream, who had some really great players. Even the Fever gave the Aces a run for their money a little bit. So I think that's another reason why this one just meant a lot to these players, because not only do they have to overcome adversity within their team, but on the other side of the court as well.
Yes, absolutely. And, again, congratulations to the Aces. Congratulations to Asia Wilson for being that girl and will continue to be that girl. But we're going to talk a little bit more about just what happened with the Mercury. Have to give them credit for making this push. But unfortunately, this was just a tough series for them.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I build parlays, try to player props, and even follow the live lines during the game. So what are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started.
So this was probably the worst game for the Mercury out of the series, which is unfortunate because, obviously the game prior to that, we said it was a must win, but yesterday was also clearly a must win for them. But we already spoke about it going into the game, having Satu Sabali out. That was either going to make them really rally together and try to fight and stay in it, or it was going to end up hurting them. But they had quite a drama-filled game for them. Head coach Nick Tibbetts earned his first technical foul after saying that a call was effing terrible, and then stepped in. This is a report, a pool report from what the officials said afterwards. He said that then Nick Tibbetts stepped closer toward the official and again yelled, "That's effing terrible," which drawed the second technical foul, which is an automatic ejection. I personally had a problem with ejecting a head coach in a finals game. I understand that the officials have to have certain boundaries and regulations and rules for them to feel comfortable and be allowed to officiate, right? However, you also have to understand that these are highly emotional times. They know that they have to win this game. And Nate Tibbetts said that, he was also very frustrated because of the amount of free throws that Vegas was shooting in that game as well. So every additional call was just making him more and more frustrated. And again, you have to learn how to manage your emotions in that moment, but throwing out a head coach in a must-win game for them in game 4 of the finals in that series, I just don't agree with the second tech on him.
I'm with you. I remember watching it, and usually sometimes what comes into question is if there's contact made with the official. And he got close, he kind of got in the official's face a little bit, but there wasn't any contact.
Mhm.
So that's another reason why I don't know if it deserved the two technicals and ejection. One technical, definitely. I think that can be agreed upon, but the ejection just seemed a little taking it a step further than it needed to. And even after, he didn't even know he got ejected. That's
He was
how,
like,
like,
"Me?"
yeah, that's how I think little he actually kinda took value of the act that he committed. He was like, "It wasn't even that bad." But he was, like, flabbergasted. He didn't know he got ejected, and I think that kinda goes to show, again, that maybe the official was a little quick to do that, but at the end of the day, in a finals game, especially at that point, the Mercury were really trying to battle back, and you want your head coach around. Christy Tolliver, I think she did do a great job holding it down. She's the assistant that stepped up to fill in that head coach position during the game. But again, it's just you have to play a perfect game to extend that series, and the Mercury didn't do that. And even off the floor, like with Nate Tibbetts, didn't necessarily do that.
Yeah, and even Kalia Copper and Dwana Bonner were also assessed with technical fouls in the fourth quarter. That's where, you know, my drama-filled ending comes into play of what I was talking about, because you have two players getting techs. Nate Tibbetts, he goes out in the second half. I believe it was like the end of the third, almost going into the fourth quarter. But I just think seeing the pool responses to why the officials, you know, have to explain why they gave the text. I just don't know if I agree with some of these. He said that Bonner was assessed her technical because of a heat of the moment reaction. I feel like that's a key word. Heat of the moment reaction, including a protesting a no call and punching the air at an official. That part I understand, but at the same time, seeing it live, it didn't look like she's about to swing on the ref. And then Copper was given a tech after she was assessed a loose ball foul, and she yelled, "Oh, profanity," which a lot of players will during a game, and aggressively approach the calling official. But these are things that we have seen throughout the season. Like, this is not new. It could be the first game of the season, and a player or a coach could get very frustrated and go right up to a ref and be like, "What was that?" I think they should be allowed to, you know, be like, "Hey, I disagree with you." And if the ref sees it differently, you know, like, they have that exchange. Some players are better at doing that than others. But again, I think it comes down to the key terms of this is a highly emotional and a heat of the moment sort of reaction, understanding what's at stake for the Mercury. Having, like, I don't know, having two of your key players get a tech in the fourth, your head coach is thrown out. It's just the whole game at that point, like, it's over with. Unfortunately, you're not bouncing back from that one.
No, you're really not. It's just blow after blow where it's just too hard to get up after that. And I kind of found it a little bit interesting because the Phoenix Mercury are probably the most silent
Hmm.
um team throughout these playoffs on the officiating. Of course, Cheryl Reeve, she was one that got ejected and then suspended, and then Becky Hammond and I think it was Stephanie White for the Aces and Fever both said or came out in support of her.
Hmm.
Um, so and Coach Tibbetts is just someone that's been a little bit more on the quiet end, and it's unfortunate that kind of bit them back. Maybe they should have argued a little bit more. I think it was even an in-game interview where Kalia Copper with Holly Rowe, she was like, "Yeah, I don't think the officials are doing a great job," something along those lines. But she just came out and said it, and I mean, it's one of those things where you really have to try to control the controllables in those moments and read the flow of the game and how it's being officiated. And in moments where it's like, hey, maybe with in a different game or in a different official, I can do this or have this reaction. And that just isn't something that we saw from the Phoenix Mercury and kind of led to the collapse a little bit.
I think one of my favorite parts is seeing Holly like handle those interviews like as a sideline reporter. It's just so funny because, you know, Holly will ask a question completely unrelated to anything to do with officiating. Obviously, if players want to talk about officiating, they can control the narrative with it. And it's just so funny because Holly's just like, right, right, right. So yeah, defensively, what have you guys seen? It's just like that's her job to do. But I think just watching those interactions are always so funny to me throughout the games. But you know, it wasn't just these final quarter texts or whatever. You said that, you know, they didn't play the full game, unfortunately. And they had to play a perfect game. And that was clear from the beginning that the biggest issue was that there was 26 points allowed off of 18 turnovers from Phoenix. Turnovers have hurt them a lot within this specific series. And they also had a problem with getting into deficits, like at least 20-point deficits almost, essentially nearly every game that they had. And that wasn't even against the Aces. That was just their playoff run in general. Like, they would get into these really big holes against teams and fight back. However, that's really difficult to do against an Aces squad whose defense was looking sharp offensively, way too many threats. They were pushing transition, getting lots of points off of turnovers. That's a hard one to try and fight back from. So, unfortunately, I just think after that third game loss, the Mercury just lost a lot of momentum, and Aces gained all of it.
Exactly. I do think that the Mercury showed a lot of fight, especially I
Mhm.
was pleased to see some of the bench efforts. I thought Kalani Brown did a great job. She had 10 points and was very sparing minutes throughout the whole playoffs. And
Yeah,
so those performances coming off the bench, I felt like were very needed. And I'm glad that the Mercury tapped into that because throughout the whole regular season, they've prided themselves on being a deep team.
yeah.
But again, it's hard to be a juggernaut like the Las Vegas Aces with the power of friendship.
With the power of friendship, yes. Credit to the Mercury, even more credit to the Las Vegas Aces. This was a really fun series, even though, it was a blowout series. There was a sweep, but it was also really fun. And again, credit to the Mercury. It has been really fun to cover. But now we're getting excited for college basketball. We're going to see what Unrivaled is looking like. So much more to cover within women's basketball as a whole. So again, please continue watching Locked On Women's Basketball. Sophia and I are pretty cool. Follow us on our socials, and we'll be back